All right, good afternoon, Facebook, family, friends, Salt Take the Earth podcast coming back on. So, had a great service at church this morning. Discussed, I think, something that's really very applicable to the church today, and many believers, something that we can inadvertently find ourselves doing and getting caught up in. And it can, I think, set things in motion not only within like our temperaments and our personality, but into just like our day-to-day walk and how we perceive the outside world around us and things that are happening, and the frustrations that it can bring about. So I just wanted to read a little bit real quick and then kind of give my take and go into the message from our service this morning, and then kind of compare it to my life and things that's kind of been happening the past couple months, and then just discuss, I think, the intentionality that comes from when you read scripture and you get convicted by the Spirit to do and to act, or to be, and moving forward, what that looks like within the Christian walk and our faith. So starting with chapter 50, verse 1, I'm going to read quite a bit, and then we're going to switch over to some passages in the New Testament and kind of just cross-reference them, compare them a little bit, and then just speak on more of what I was elaborating on a second ago. So starting with verse 1, it says, "The mighty one, God the Lord, has spoken and called the earth. From the rising of the sun to its going down, out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God will shine forth. Our God shall come, shall not keep silent. A fire shall devour before him, and it shall be very tempestuous all around him. He shall call to the heavens from above, and to the earth, that he may judge his people. Gather my saints together to me, those who have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. Let the heavens declare his righteousness, for God himself is a judge." Silo. Verse 7. "Hear, O my people, I will speak, O Israel, and I will testify against you. I am God, your God. I will not rebuke you for your sacrifices or your burnt offerings, which are continually before me. I will not take a bull from your house, nor goats out of your fold. For every beast of the forest is mine, and cattle of the 1,000 hills. I know all the birds of the mountains, and the wild beasts of the fields are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine and all of its fullness. Will I eat the flesh of the bulls, or drink the blood of the goats?" And it's a question mark. And verse 14, "Offer to God thanksgiving, and pay your vows to the Most High. Call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me." All right, so this passage right here is just essentially talking, God is talking to his people, and he's explaining to them who he is, right? He is the God of the Most High. And with that means everything is from him. He can do and have all things because the earth is his. And the way that it breaks this down in regards to, for man and the things that they think in regards to the stuff that they need, right? But one of the biggest things that was preached on and kind of discussed this morning at church was offer to God thanksgiving, right? I think oftentimes we get so inundated in our life and the things that happen, generally when things are going wrong, we forget and we neglect to be thankful to God for the things that we do have. And we can only see the problems. We can only see maybe the scarcity of resources, maybe the overdraft fees in our bank account, or the limited or the the high prices of food and gas in our country, or our kids being defiant and disobedient, or our marital problems, or our health issues, all these things. We tend to get focused on only them, and we always feel like we got to solve it, we got to try to fix it, we got to do this, and all that distracts us from just thanking God for who he is, for the life we do have, for the blessings that he has bestowed upon us, and just being able to rest and have peace in that, and being able to understand as Christians, like, excuse me, we are his, and with him being the most high, him being the son of Abraham, or the father of, you know, the world, and essentially um, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the one true living God, we really are in need of nothing. And the things that we maybe think that we need, or that we're in fear, or we have anxiety for, that we need, with, you know, our pantries maybe look a little bare, or those gas prices are getting high and it's costing a lot to fill up our car, and that affects our budget and puts restraints on us, and it's, you know, it's a challenge, right? These are the things that we face on a day-to-day basis, that we battle with. But God is still telling us to be thankful and to give him thanks, right? Verse 14 and 15, and I'll read it again. Offer to God thanksgiving and pay your vows to the Most High. Call upon me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me. So, I mean, this is a twofold thing. Like, this is us thanking God and praising him and giving him our worship, you know, not only with our words, but with our life and our lifestyle, and how we conduct ourselves day in and day out, you know, being that representation of him, but then also that daily sacrifice that the New Testament talks about, you know, that we are, you know, that we die to our flesh each day to walk in newness of life and to walk in the Spirit. And so I wanted to read this quick insert out of Psalms. Again, it was Psalms 50. I read verses 1 through 15, and then I'm going to jump over now to how this relates in the New Testament. And so we're going to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, right? So 1 Corinthians chapter 10, again, this is the church of Corinth is being ministered to. I think Paul writes this. So Paul is essentially writing to the church of Corinth, and he's discussing some things within their church and kind of rebuking them and trying to reprove them for some of their actions and their behaviors. And so let's go ahead and let's jump in and give this a read. So chapter 10, starting with verse 1. It says, Moreover, brethren, I do not want you to be unaware that all of our fathers were under the cloud, all passed through the sea. All were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. All ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank of the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Verse 5. But with the most of them God was not well pleased, for their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. Now these things became our example, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted, and do not become idolaters, as were some of them. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink, and rose up to play. Nor let us commit sexual immorality, as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 fell. Nor let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted, and were destroyed by serpents. Nor complain, as some of them also complained, and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now all these things happened to them as examples, and they were written for all of our admonition, upon whom the ends of the ages have come. Therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you except such is common of man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. All right, so I think it's interesting, and it's a fascinating that you see in this, right? Because this is to the church of Corinth, and you know, he's discussing people with sexual morality, people that are committing adultery, right? People that are tempting God. But then also he puts complainers in there, people that are complaining. And I think, you know, this emphasis, because you can relate this back to Psalms, when the children of Israel, right, they got led out of Egypt and God had spared their life. But then what did they do? They wandered around the wilderness complaining, wishing that, oh, we wish to God that we were back in Egypt, right? Like they were upset and frustrated that the things were happening to them. And so they wandered for 40 years in the wilderness. And it was because of their mentality and their ungrateful spirit. And I think that's why in chapter 50 of Psalms, verse 14, where it says to be thankful to the Lord, to give those things. I think we have to learn as Christians to recognize all the things we have to be thankful for, and to understand the importance of giving God his due, essentially. He wakes us up in the morning. Even if we have ailments in our body, like, we still wake up to fresh oxygen in our lungs. Even if we have some debilitating illness or sickness, being alive is something to be thankful for. Even if we live in a poverty-stricken area, and I know because I grew up, living in a poverty-stricken area. I grew up within the foster care system, before I got put in foster care, being forced to steal for food, or having to, like, I remember one time I broke into a house to steal food because I saw it on through the window. And so there's things that we go through in life that maybe later on they impact us, myself included, when it comes to, if my kids complain about, well, Dad, I want this instead of that for dinner, and then I get agitated because they're complaining, so then I complain about them complaining, instead of just, thanking God and instilling in them to appreciate and to thank God, and what that actually does and how that changes the perception and the perspective of our life. Because if we are complaining, that means we're thinking about the things we don't have, instead of being grateful and appreciative of the things that we do have. And so, as it mentions here, right, in, chapter 10, again, it's 1 Corinthians, verse 10, nor complained, as some of them also complained and were destroyed by the destroyer. So I think it's important, because this is going to showcase our heart and I think our nature internally with us, and if we're appreciative and grateful for God, and then too, if we're trusting him, because if you're trusting him and you're having faith in him, like, you're not going to complain. You're going to be appreciative and you're going to be thankful, and you're going to understand you may have little now, or tomorrow, or even, a year from now, but that continued thankfulness to him and that continued daily devotion and sacrifice to him, when it's time to reap a harvest, you'll have a harvest. And I think so many times as believers, we get so inundated with the comparison trap in our society. Well, this person has that kind of car and I don't have that kind of car. Or, well, this person has that nice truck and I don't have that nice of a truck. Or, well, God, their kids mine so much better than my kids. Or, oh, well, like, his wife is like this, or her husband is like that, and why can't you be this, and why can't you do that, right? And we see this continual comparison battle, and it gets us stuck in this trap of not being thankful and not being appreciative and not having that gratitude toward Christ and the one that loves us and gives to us according to his plans and his mercy, right? And so I wanted to get on here and kind of share this message that was preached this morning, and kind of just what it was weighing on my heart, because I myself understand and know what it's like to struggle. And I think many people in our society today, we are going through our own types of struggles, whether it be financial hardships, whether it be health complications, whether it be our kids, our spouse, our job, all these things, anything that the devil can use to keep us inundated with that fear and anxiety, or to think that we have to get this, and it limits us in showing our gratitude and appreciation to God, then he's being successful in his attacks and his manipulation of us, not only I think in a physical sense, but also in a spiritual sense, because we're giving him ground to deteriorate and hurt our lives, day in and day out. And as I was saying, like, I'm guilty of that. I've under immense pressure at work, the COVID-19 vaccine and all the things surrounding it, taking a stand for truth and what is right and what is justice. Because as a Christian, right, I believe that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to take a stand, and we understand that God is a God of law and order. God is a God of truth, and God is a just God. And so when you see, like in my situation, our society and our military specifically, and things that are happening with the COVID-19 vaccine mandate, and the things that I'm convicted about, and having applied for a religious exemption and getting that exemption denied, and then appealing that denial, and then that getting denied, and then currently going through this administrative process where the military is separating me, right? Like, it is pretty much telling me, you're not abiding by this standard that we've established. Forget about that it's brand new or whatever it may be, or it's, many of us consider it to be manipulation, and bait and switch, as I would call it. But really, God has just been impressing on me for the past few weeks, even before this message, like, it matters in some sense, because like, this is my livelihood, right? Like, I just got stationed at MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. I just bought a house in August. The market was starting to climb when we got down here, so we paid a decent amount on our house. And so the stress is there. The reason to complain is there, right? The injustice of this, and this isn't fair, and the constant frustration of this daily battle that I'm in. And God has just been revealing, like, to just, for one, stop complaining about it, but just be thankful that God is the author and the finisher of our faith, that God is the God of the world, and he holds everything in the palm of his hand. And he giveth and he taketh away. And if this is something that he chooses to take from me, I need to cheerfully give it and allow that to take place, because he's going to give something else in its place. And so that's where gratitude and thankfulness comes into play. And it's hard. I mean, it's probably been one of the hardest things that I've had to endure in my adult life. I have 5 kids. I have, my wife, some of the things that she does and that she's going through, as far as like some medical complications, that we're dealing with, and to try to plead my case to, even with these different instances, to my leadership, if you want to call them that, and to be like, hey, these are the things I have going on. Like, I understand, like, this is an administrative process, and this is what you think you have to do, and you're, following your man-made orders, regardless of how unlawful I think they are. But God has just been dealing with me to, instead of complaining about it, instead of being frustrated and bitter and resentful about it, to just take it to the cross and lay it down at the foot of the cross, and allow God to move the mountains that he says that he can move. Allow him, that mustard seed of faith, allow him to showcase his strength in my weakness. Allow him to do the impossible, the things that I can't do, because I have no control over this. And this has been the hardest part. And this is, I think, the crossroads that God brought me to for this reason, because it was easy to be complacent in the security of a government job. It was easy to be complacent, to show up to work, to mind your P's and Q's, as they say, check off that box of do this, this, and this, keep your training up to date, do your shooting qualifications, go here, do that, drive this, drive that, load this, weigh that, right? Like, all these things that come with these types of jobs that we do in the military, and just God saying, where am I at in your life? Like, what are you doing to serve me? And I think it was really just a wake-up call when I had the conviction just based off of who I know God is and his character, and how it wasn't aligning with the things that was happening in my workplace and the things that were transpiring, and then how quickly it just snowballed out of control. At least for me, in my personal experience, I'm talking, I won NCO of the year in 2019. I won, because I do logistics. I won logistics professional of the year in 2020, and then even for my unit when I first got here in 2021. Locally, just being able to provide the expertise that I have, and a decade plus of experience in the military, but then so quickly to be removed. But God has just revealed to me in this process, in this, these growing pains for me, that my faith has to be in him and him alone. It has to solely rely on him. But with that, as he's bringing me from one phase of life to another, I don't need to be like the Israelites when they were taken from Egypt. They were spared from slavery, and I'm not comparing the military to slavery, so don't do that. If you all see this and think that I'm not, I'm just trying to give a historical emphasis. God spared them from being enslaved to the Egyptians, and then all they did was complain. All they did was being mad that, well, I wish we had, back like we had it in Egypt. I mean, God is making manna fall from heaven for them. He is leading them by a cloud and by fire. Like, the amount of I think just not having the situational awareness in this kind of aspect, that they're complaining, right? But then I looked at my own life and I'm like, okay, God, like, you've provided a way for my family. You've given me a beautiful home. You blessed my 5 kids. And, we just had 2 foster kids because, we're foster parents. So it's, you allowed us to bless and be a blessing to them, for short periods of time. You've aligned all these things, and then I'm over here just complaining. I'm over here not walking in your will for my life. I'm over here wanting to do, what Jock wants to do. And God's just like, hey, bud, like, you need to figure yourself out, because that's not the right way. Like, you need to get on this path and do the things that I called you to do. Just as he tried to do, with the Israelites when they're wandering around in the wilderness. Just as Paul is correcting the church of Corinth and getting them to do here. And he's laying out, their sinful nature and what they're doing. And he's trying to correct it, trying to warn them. And I think oftentimes we read the good things in the Bible that we can apply to be motivational and inspirational, and we take a lot from it because we're like, yeah, that's great. Yeah, God loves me. And that's true. He does love us. But also we forget the refining components of it. We get when God wants to prune us, right? When he wants to peel back the layers of our life and show us who he truly is by what we're not, right? The strength that we don't have. And the crossroads in my life in the recent months that, I've been encountering what I've been encountering, it's really just been so inspiring and kind of left me just awestruck the way that God is moving and showing me more of a revelation of who he is. Relationally, intellectually, like, I can grasp who God is. I can say, oh yeah, he's the God of the universe. He created, the world in 7 days, and he did this, this, and this, and oh, he's awesome. But sometimes we don't really allow that relationship component to actually connect the way that God has intended. And the message this morning really just resonated with me because it highlighted in my life where I have complained. I've been super stressed out, and in some aspects, like, questioning God, like, wow, this, and like, this is what I want. I look at my plaques and I see all the things that I've accomplished, and I'm just like, God, I don't want to let that go, right? I don't want to lose that. I don't want to not have the security of bi-weekly paycheck, our annual salary and immediate medical benefits and all these things, right? And then too, like the pride that I do get from serving my country, the pride that I do have from wearing a uniform and being a difference maker, right? And all the things that entails of being a military veteran and people in the military veteran community, like that sense of accomplishment and pride that we get. But God has just shown me in greater depths what it really means to be a part of his army and what it means to be a part of his, his force with regards to the church body and getting in tune with the body of believers in the spirit and walking that faith out and then watching him move and operate on the way that he can, because the Bible tells us that he is faithful, that even when we're unfaithful, that he is faithful. So I really just wanted to get on here and just kind of briefly discuss this and let you guys know, let's be thankful for what we do have. That we do have a career, that we have been able to serve in the military and serve honorably, many of us. And if you're not in the military, you have another occupation, that you're able to serve in that capacity. That we live in America. We live historically in the greatest country that's ever been founded. And I think sometimes, even with the things that are happening where we can be frustrated, but I think God still just wants us to give him thanks and give him praise and show him the gratitude that he's owed, because even for nothing else, it's for that he is God. I do want to give a quick disclaimer, just because I am a service member. These opinions are mine and mine alone. They are not any opinions of the DoD or the Air Force. Just given that, just because I don't want something to try to come back and people think, well, this is like, I'm speaking on behalf of the Air Force. I'm not. I'm speaking on behalf of Jock Bryant, my own personal battle, not only within like the military and this COVID-19 vaccine, but spiritually, its implications in my own life, and how that God is showing me that regardless of all the things that I may face, regardless of the things and the trials that my family and I are going through, just be thankful. Be thankful to God. Bite my tongue when it comes to complaining, and try not to be someone that speaks death and speaks destruction, or is downtrodden and sad and depressed, because sometimes it's easy to get that way. Trust me, this past week has been extremely challenging, to say the least. My whole family's in Virginia right now. I was forbidden to leave the state just because this whole administrative process. So my wife and 5 kids had to drive up there. She had to drive by herself. And there's a lot of this that I want to be upset about. There's a lot that I want to shake my fist and be like, God, why are you letting this happen? God, why are you doing this? And God is just refining my thought processes and my thinking, and just pruning me to still be thankful, to still love him, to still honor him, and to pray for my leaders, right? To pray for those in my chain of command, to pray wisdom for them, to pray God's sovereignty over them, to pray mercy over them, and to still just try to stand the way that Daniel stood, right? Even facing the decree that he faced when it come to King Nebuchadnezzar, but just standing on our faith, on our principles, and on what we know God has called us to stand on, and allowing him to do the rest, right? Like, that is the emphasis and the purpose of faith. And so I just wanted to get on here. I know it's kind of long because it's almost 30 minutes now, but just encourage you guys. I'm praying for all of you, and just be blessed. Be blessed and give thanks to God. No matter what you're facing, no matter what you're going through, no matter the obstacles that you have to overcome, give thanks to God, because he is God and he is worthy. Thanks.